I must have been about 9 years old. Probably about 9 years old. And it was in February. Pretty sure. My parents had gone out for the day. I was alone with my sister. And when they came back, they brought with them two PlayStation 1s. The original PlayStations. Well, not the original PlayStation. These were a newer model and had a screen attached to it. So all we had to do was plug it in and go. Didn't have to plug into a TV. It was pretty super. With mine, I got 3 games. My parents thought really hard about this one. I got Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and Final Fantasy IX. I'm thinking I was about 8 or 9 years old. Me, being a Nintendo gamer, specifically a Nintendo gamer, was actually playing Final Fantasy VI, what I thought was then 3, as they walked through the door, so I was ready for a new RPG. I'd only beaten 6 800 times. And I'd never played a game with a disc before. So it took some reading for me to be comfortable playing it. And being the proper kind of gamer, I guess, I decided to play Final Fantasy VII first. I played Final Fantasy VII for a few hours, maybe no more than 4 hours. Reaching sector, I do believe it was 6, and then turning it off. To try out Final Fantasy VIII, which I had played for maybe 2 hours, couldn't really get into that one. And then I put in Final Fantasy IX and didn't stop playing it for several months. In between Final Fantasy IX sessions, if I just needed a break from plot drops or just the game in general, I would try to go back to Final Fantasy VII and found it hard to do so. Because my mother actually started playing Final Fantasy VII, and she got further than I did. So instead of 7, I went back to playing Final Fantasy 8 and got more used to the junction system and continued on my merry old way for several months, bouncing between Final Fantasies 8 and 9. 9 by far being my favorite. It wasn't for several months until I got back to Final Fantasy 7 and I started playing it again. And even young me decided that it wasn't a game I thoroughly enjoyed the way I enjoyed 7, and to a much lesser extent 8. I don't hate 8, I just didn't like it, and I didn't like 7. By the time I got back to Final Fantasy 7, I was on the 4th disc of both 8 and 9. And for reference's sake, Final Fantasy VII is only a 3-disc game. And I wasn't even at the end of the first disc when I took a break and played one of my sister's games instead, being Legend of Dragoon, also a far superior game to both 7 and 8. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I would be perfectly fine never playing this game again. What set me off, I believe is a good term to use, is that a coworker of mine started talking to me about games and said he absolutely fell in love with Final Fantasy VII. And a bubble burst in my brain somewhere because I hear it all the time. Final Fantasy VII is the best. Final Fantasy VII is the best Final Fantasy. The villain of Final Fantasy VII is the best villain. The plot of Final Fantasy VII is the best plot of any JRPG ever. And the bubble has been growing inside my brain like a cancer. And him saying that, a live person, to my face, telling me that Final Fantasy VII was the best, made me realize that this video and the following videos were necessary. I do not wear rose-tinted glasses. Before you tell me that I love 6 and 9 so much, I probably love 14 more. So, suck that, nerd. Before you tell me that I'm coming in this with anger, I'm coming in this for two reasons. One, to show everyone that nostalgia does not save this game. It does not save its plot, it does not save its characters, it does not save its horrible presentation. And horrible soundtrack, let's be fair. I won't lie, even in my salt, there are redeeming factors about this game. Several, even. And I'll cover those when I get to them. However, the first reason I'm doing this is to show everyone, both coming back to the game and those new to the game, that it isn't what people think it was. Not at the time and not now. The attention it has gotten is stupid. The remake it's getting better fix all the problems I have with this game. I'll try it. God help me, I'll try it. The second reason is because, for the life of me, I couldn't get past the opening section of this game on my own. I didn't need a guide. I didn't need help. What help I needed was to continue holding the controller and playing this game. I tried. I couldn't do it. So now I have incentive. Why do I need this incentive? To see if I am wrong. It's altogether possible that 9 is just the superior game, and I just use that as an example for everything because, 9 is great. And I will nod to its flaws and then point out the fact that those flaws are far smaller and far less irritating than the flaws of Final Fantasy VII. No, I will not be covering Dirge of Cerberus. No, I will not be covering Crisis Core. This video series, which I will upload when I damn well feel like it, is all about the PlayStation Final Fantasy VII. Not the PlayStation 4 that's coming out, which may fix all of the problems that I have with this game, like this very, very boring title screen. Whose idea was this? But also the plot issues I have, the motivation issues I have, and the fact that the first 5 hours of a normal casual playthrough, just playing around at your own pace, is the most boring experience I've had in a Final Fantasy game. And I'm not kidding. The opening sequence, Midgar, is hands down the most boring sequence of events I have experienced a Final Fantasy game portray. Not only does it bore the hell out of me, not only is the environment muddy and garbage to look at, not only is the plot very thinly handed to you and you're told to accept it, this is the longest opening sequence of any Final Fantasy game before things actually happen, and then there's another 2 hours of a flashback that is lying to you. I have issues, myriad issues, with Final Fantasy VII. And I'm playing it to express these to you. If we can get past calm, then we might have ourselves a show, now wouldn't we? If I do not get past calm, you will understand why, because I'll make it known. Final Fantasy VIII, while boring, is not this big of a bore. Because Final Fantasy VIII tried in the beginning. Not super hard, but it definitely tried, and it definitely captured my attention. Final Fantasy IX drove the ball so far out of the park that I never came back to 7 until it was done. Final Fantasy VI, to this day, stands as one of my all-time favorite games because it captures you and drags you through the entire plot, and you love it. Final Fantasy XIV, with its MMO grinding and fetch quests and everything else, has a far more vibrant story, world, and characters than Final Fantasy VII. I'm expressing my anger with this game and my dislike for its universal praise now, and I will continue doing so. This is part 0 of Let's Play Final Fantasy VII. Why? I'm not entirely sure why. I've just been holding this in for as long as I could. Marley, Sax Dude Malloy, he and I had a conversation about Final Fantasy VII not crazy long ago, maybe a week. And I realized how angry this series made me. I'll call it a fucking series because it is. And how much attention it got even though it deserved none of it. Fear not, I will give this game props where it deserves them in both storytelling, design at the time, and structure. But you will see very little else from me in this series, unless I find myself to be wrong. I wouldn't go counting on that. If you are a giant fan of Final Fantasy VII and you want to leave, feel free. If you're a giant fan of Final Fantasy VII and you feel like defending it in the comments of this and future videos, don't. I'm taking a very artistic view of this game and its plot for the first time in 8 years. It has been a very long time since I've cared a lick about Final Fantasy VII. I'm going to be ripping this game apart, and any attempts to defend it will be laughed at. If you are new to Final Fantasy VII, like you, Matthew, if you are watching this, I insist upon you watching someone who might take it nicely. A much softer approach to this game. Or, if you want the blood honest truth about Final Fantasy VII, please continue watching. I will do my best to make an honest attempt at this game. Again, if I make it past calm, then we'll have ourselves a show. Until next time, everyone. I've just ranted for almost 16 minutes, now 16 minutes, about a game I dislike, and that you are going to watch me play. Until then, everyone.